So, good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Soji Apampa, and I'm with the Convention on Business Integrity. We have an opportunity to quickly introduce ourselves round. Cynthia, do you want to go next? Cynthia, can you hear us? Okay, maybe Vivek, you can go next.
Yeah, thank you, Soji. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. My name is Vivek.
Yes, please. Good morning. My name is Cynthia. I'm in charge of stakeholder relations.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, please go on, Vivek.
Apologies, Cynthia.
No, the line, I'm sure there was a delay on the line. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was saying my name is Vivek Menon, and I'm from the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, and I'm Head of Collective Action and Partnerships for Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. Thank you.
Okay. Martin?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you to all the panelists for joining us today as well. My name is Martin Bendison. I'm also part of the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, and I have a similar role to Vivek. I also support our collective actions and partnerships. I've been working with Soji and his team from CBI for a number of years on MACN's collective action project in Nigeria to combat corruption in the maritime sector. Happy to be here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, over to you, sir, Deputy Controller.
Yes. Thank you very much, Soji. It's good to see Vivek again after our last outing at Providence Hotel. I'm so happy with what you are doing. Martin, you are welcome. We were together last week to further discuss some of these programs. Good morning, participants and everybody in the house. My name is Deran, the Deputy Controller of Customs. I'm in charge of, presently, I'm in charge of Customs Administration at the Idiroko border. Idiroko is a border town between Nigeria and Benin Republic. But just up to last week, I was in charge of enforcement and compliance at Nigerian Customs Service, Chinkanaland Port Command. And I have been participating in the promotion of customs business relationship. I look forward to a very rewarding outcome today.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. It's very interesting that you are in charge of enforcement and compliance. You are the very person that we need to speak to about some of these challenges. When we had a webinar discussing the issues in the eastern ports, and before I go on, I should congratulate all the stakeholders in the shipping and the maritime sector in Nigeria for having the largest vessel ever to call a Nigerian port, not call Lagos, but call One Port. Bringing to life the eastern ports again, we're very delighted with that. I hear the container vessel could had a capacity of over 10,000 containers. That is massive. And that it was over 300 meters long. I don't know if the audience can picture 100 meters. It was 300 meters long for the vessel. That's a massive, massive vessel. And it's kudos to the Nigerian government because they have just recently dredged the channel to make sure that they have the requisite depths. I believe it's over 12 meters deep now. And that's what enabled the vessel to come in. So yes, I'm really happy to see you, sir. Perhaps you can kick off the whole discussion by helping us understand why do we need standard operating procedures? Why is it important? Why should this be something that we're spending any time discussing?
Okay. Thank you very much, Soji. It's actually a great honor for Nigerian Customs Service to be the lead opening person for this eventful discussion that we're going to have today. The truth is that the maritime industry that your team has been trying to promote is very, very important to the Nigerian economy and indeed global economy, because maritime constitutes over 70% of earnings for us in Nigerian Customs Service. As a matter of fact, the CGC has requested that I thank all of you and the zonal coordinator, who would have been the person on this panel, but who is presently engaged in a tour of the zone. They are very, very grateful. Why do we have to engage in standard operational procedure in the ports? The truth is that trade and commerce will remain at the center of our national discourse, and within the sub-region too, because I'm currently not at the border. And trade and commerce is synonymous with customs, so it is also good that you asked us to come here. But however, the challenges of trade has gone beyond the immediate challenge of customs revenue and the roles that we play. That's actually crisscrossed into cross-border trade, national security, and environmental protection. So we consider this very important, but we think we cannot do it alone. Some of these challenges throw up other issues that we need a collaboration with other stakeholders in the system. And it is very, very important that we collaborate.
Can I ask, sir, that you please speak closer to the mic? It's quite, the level is low. Yes.
Okay, I said that the challenges of trade has thrown up so that the need for collaboration among various stakeholders in the system, both locally and internationally. As you can see, Vivek is international, Martin is international. So you can see that the challenges of trade is not just localized, it also has international. And the SOP is one of the important tools that we require for removing obstacles to trade. And that obstacle, as we have seen in the past, shouldn't just be about one agency. What we've tried to do is to see that we leverage on the reforms in all the agencies. We leverage on the reform in all the agencies. We have major stakeholders in the system. Like we used to say in WCO, beyond customs, there is also business. So we have other regulators like Nigerian Ports Authority, we have Nigerian Shippers Council, we have the MASA, then we have the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network for which you are promoting. The question then is, what are those things that bring the need for SOP? It is the fact that we have various laws established, various mandates. So there is need for us to harmonize our legal procedures in a manner that it will not be contradictory to the aims and objectives expected from the maritime industry. It is also important that we harmonize our operations in a way that it will create speedy delivery of trade and services in the maritime industry. These are the key areas that we are going to get involved, because in delivering service, we are going to make sure that there is systematic and effective intention on the parts of all stakeholders. I think having done this introduction, I will stop here and give room for other panelists to speak to.
Okay. Maybe I should follow that up, by asking the same question to both Martin and Vivek, that why should we have standard operating procedures? What does that help us achieve? Martin, do you want to go first?
Well, I mean, it's essential for any business entering a port or in any transaction that they understand what is required. And standard operating procedures is fundamental if you should be able to do the right thing. And we see that business sometimes struggle to understand regulation, to understand standard operating procedures. So part of our mission is also to help business access and make regulation transparent through dialogues here today with customs. we see that in general, awareness and the dialogue is lacking on regulation SOPs. So we're very grateful that there's been quite ambitious steps taken in Nigeria to establish SOPs, to formalize this on paper, and to have it centralized. But we also see that there's a constant need to revise and revisit the SOPs and also to work with awareness raising. We work in many countries, and as soon as last week, I spoke to our colleagues in Argentina, and Customs Service in Argentina, they are now taking similar steps as the Nigerian Customs Service have done to actually formalize.
Sorry, are you saying Nigeria is ahead on that? That they
Yes.
don't actually have standard operating procedures in Argentina?
No, the Argentinian custom doesn't have anything on paper in terms of operationalizing the regulation. Like, what does it mean in practice during a port call? They don't have that yet. So we've been sharing the documents that the Nigerian Customs Service have developed and saying, this is what Nigeria is doing, and you should do something similar. Well, just as an example that there's so much we can learn, and just to emphasize what Mr. Nandi was saying, that this is international. We can learn from other countries, and also when you talk about the port, the procedures are very similar. So there's so many learnings here we can do, and yeah, let me stop here and let Vivek also to respond to the question.
Okay, Vivek, yeah.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Soji. And also, it's very nice to see you, Mr. Nadi. It was good to see you last year in Lagos, if I'm correct, the first time we met. I would add to what Martin say from a first-hand experience being on board vessels. Now we're talking about ports and terminals, which are very specific. Being a former master mariner myself, that means we brought in ships to different ports around the world. And as an industry, we are very used to having procedures which make us do the right things in the country that we visit, because a ship may have a particular place where it's registered, but when you come to a country, you need to follow the rules and regulations of that country. It's just like anyone flying into Abuja, they need to follow the rules and regulations of Nigeria, and specifically in Abuja, you're required to show those documentations. But if I'm not aware of it, what I should present and what I should use when I come with a ship, this operating procedures, whether it's standardized or not, a simple operating procedure will guide me as a master and all the masters who are calling Nigerian ports to fulfill the requirements that the country needs. And if you are able to then standardize that, it's even more better, because we don't have to worry about calling Port Harcourt or Lagos or One. For example, it is not maybe the same, but is at least uniform in structure from the requirements from various agencies. And just to add to what Martin has said about Argentina, we're having a similar dialogue in Ukraine and India. India being very specific because it's a large coastline, in a way has its similarities to Nigeria, quite unique to its own ports and terminals in different parts of the coastline. And in a way, I think standardizing procedures in Nigeria paves a path for other countries to see how they can improve their existing operating procedures. So I will just add to what Martin just said about Argentina. There's also a discussion in similar lines happening in Ukraine and in India. And again, I will stop here with my comments for now, and then take the dialogue further for other participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivek. We're just being joined now by Mr. Moses Fadikpe of the Nigeria Shippers Council, but we will give him a minute or two to settle down before we throw a question at him. Sir, if I go back to Deputy Comptroller Nadi, are you satisfied with the scope of issues that are covered in the standard operating procedures that you have? Are you satisfied with the range of things that are there?
Okay, first of all, let me also join in thanking the last two speakers for recognizing the feat Nigeria has attained since 2012 that we've been collaborating. We wouldn't have attained that feat without Maritime Anti-Corruption Network efforts. We've been collaborating with you since 2012 Nigeria and Indonesia was used as a case studies, and we have been globally celebrated as success stories in this. So I'm not surprised that Argentina, Ukraine, and others are following suit. Like I said before, SOP is supposed to be a universal language. It's supposed to be like music. You don't need to understand the lyrics before you dance to it. All you need to do is to understand the beat. And that's what SOP is. Like what Vivek said, if you travel to a particular place, for instance, Nigeria's proximate neighbors, 4 of them are all French speaking. I don't need to speak French, for instance, to understand their SOP. So that's why it's very, very important. If they come to Nigeria as an English-speaking country that we are, they don't need to understand English to understand our SOP. So in answering your question, I will say that, yes, even though we are acclaimed internationally to have achieved some level of moderation in our SOP, I wouldn't say it is Uhuru yet. If it is Uhuru, we wouldn't be here. And don't forget that what the last 2 speakers said, that it should be dynamic. SOP, there's room for improvement every time for SOP, because trade itself is dynamic. For instance, we are meeting virtually here now. Nobody anticipated that most of these meetings is going to be permanently virtual for the past 5 months. But it's been so. So what do we do under such circumstances? I will give you a typical example. Vivek said something about boarding of vessels. I remember the crisis that almost attained boarding of vessels at the inception of COVID-19, when there were this global scare that ship crew will be transmitting the virus across nations. Now, what do you need in order to get the encouragement, get fear out of ship crew and in trading nations? It is SOP. You need to create an SOP that is dynamic. So I wouldn't say that what we have in Nigeria is ultimate yet. There is still room for improvement. However, we are trying.
Okay, so in terms of the standard operating procedures, the case has been made as to why we need to standardize those operating procedures. It helps us to speak the same language with our neighbors. It helps even the users of the facilities to understand the language of the landlord of the facilities, the other agencies within the facilities. It gives them a common approach to looking at the same issues. And, but in terms of how wide it is, we're understanding from Deputy Comptroller Nadi that, well, it's supposed to be dynamic. You can never cover everything in one go. There will be unforeseen scenarios that you will have to be developing more SOPs for as they arise. And also, I guess in the beginning, all the agencies handled the areas of SOPs that they felt able to handle at the time, because you can't do everything in one go. Mr. Fadikpe, are you with us now? Hello, Mr. Fadikpe.
Good morning to you all on the webinar.
Yes. Good morning, yes, Mr. Fadikpe. Yeah.
Good morning to you all, Mr. Vivek, Mr. Nadi, Martin Bender. I greet all of you. Good morning once again. But please, Mr. Pampa, will you please, like I told you, have a dual meeting. Will you please just give me like 15 minutes just to start for that meeting, and I will be fully back with you in this webinar, please.
Okay. We wonder if you can just give us a quick opinion before you leave, okay, which is really the importance of SOPs. Why SOPs are so important to the operations in the maritime sector.
Okay, thank you so much. What is SOP? SOP is what we call standard operating procedure in Nigerian ports. this is like a Bible to all the service providers in the port industry. It tells us what, how, where, and the timeline we use to carry out our activities. For instance, the customs, the SOP will tell the world over that this is the business we do in the ports. This is how we do that business in the port. These are your expectations as a customer to Nigerian customs. This is the timeline we carry out these things. If you fall out of all our laid down rules and regulations and guidelines, these are the sanctions that we meted out to you. So saying that any part of the world you find yourself, before you even import a pen to Nigeria, you could have seen that SOP on the web of what are your expectations when to get to Nigerian territorial water and when you engage with the customs. So ditto for the MPA, ditto for every other person, ditto for all service providers in the port system, like the terminals, the shipping companies, and all ancillary service providers in the port industry. And again, even the vessel reception, all these are stated in the SOPs. When you are coming into our water, what are your expectations? When you back at the terminal, what are your expectations? Who are supposed to even attend to your vessel? At what timeline? What are the obligations? So SOP in a nutshell, like I said, it's like a Bible that will guide all operators and users of those services within the Nigerian port system. And everybody must adhere to it. And that's why we said in not too short a time, there's going to be what we call a single process card. And that single process card will be an all-encompassing document that will be available for all port users in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fadipe, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Okay, I'll be back with you. Thanks so much. All right, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Deputy Comptroller, can I be controversial and say that some people in the oil and gas industry have told us that there's a major gap in the current SOPs, and that major gap is, for instance, the importation of a rig. That when you're importing a rig into Nigeria, you bring it in under temporary importation, and that it is purely, that can be renewed once, and then after that, it will be purely at the discretion of customs. There is no permanent importation of rigs. That's number one. And number two, that you are not able to export your rig thereafter. Once it has come into Nigeria, you cannot really export your rig after that. Perhaps there are some inaccuracies in those statements. I'll be happy for you to correct us. And perhaps there are some misunderstandings. Maybe you can help us by setting us straight. Thank you, sir. We can't hear you, sir. You need to unmute, sir.
Start from the last two words you used, inaccuracies and misinformation.
Okay.
And that is why what Moses Fadipe said is very important. And what WTO is promoting is very important, information sharing. WCO is also promoting the same thing through Kyoto Convention, transparency, information sharing. What you don't know is very expensive if you want to participate in it. Now, let me tell you something. One major challenge of SOP is the seeming contradiction between the role of ensuring improvements in speedy delivery and national security. By national security here, I don't mean carrying arms and guns to protect the border. I mean economic security of the nation. The issue of temporary importation is a very simple and clear process for Nigerian Customs Service and its stakeholders. If you talk about a rig, which you used, rigs are very, very expensive. Very, very expensive. There's no person in customs or no part of the law, which I'm still going to talk about in the course of this discussion in customs, that says you should not pay duty for your rig. However, stakeholders and users of rigs and importers of rigs believe that oil exploration is a temporary business. You can have an oil field today that is producing, and tomorrow is dried up, and you want to move your rig to Angola. Therefore, you choose to bring in your rig under temporary importation. There's no law that says it must be permanently temporary importation. It is a choice that you have to make. There's no law that says you must bring it in. Please, let me repeat. No law says you must bring in your rig under temporary importation. You have a choice. It is flexible. The choice is to either bring it in under temporary importation or to bring it in and pay full duty. But considering the cost of a rig, do you have to bring it in and pay duty? Many people opt to bring in the rig under temporary importation. Again, when the law says you cannot re-export what has been imported, it does not accommodate cargo that has been imported under temporary importation. What the law says is that under Schedule 6, Section 8 of the Common External Tariff is that you cannot export what you have imported. And it's simple. To avoid money laundering, you import cargo into Nigeria, you export our money out, then after a few days, you re-export the same product. Nigerian money has been taken out of the country. But for temporary importation products, what the provision says is that you can bring it in, deposit with a bank a certificate that you will issue to cash, for which the bank will issue certificate to customs to say, okay, we guarantee with this bond that this particular cargo, if the owner wants to take it out eventually, the owner can take it out and collect his money back from the bank, and the bank will retrieve the certificate from customs. I'm using layman's language here. Now, if you also decide eventually to keep the rig permanently in Nigeria, we convert that money that you've deposited in the bank into the appropriate duty that would have been paid for that rig. Now, should you also say you want to move the rig out, when you are bringing it in, you must give customs the time frame for which you want to use the rig in Nigeria. If you say we're using it for 6 months, you tell Nigerians it is for 6 months. The Nigerian Customs Service, it is for 6 months. And after 6 months, we revoke your temporary importation permit. You have a choice upon revoking it to either convert to home use. In that case, you pay duty for it, or you re-export to the country that you brought it in from in the first instance, or to another country where you have another contract. So it is not true that we don't have provision for you to pay duty if you want to. It's also not true that it's not renewable. As a matter of fact, you can renew for as much as 3 times. For something like rig, you can renew for as many times as you want to. After all, don't forget that you deposited money equivalent to the duty that you would have paid in a bank, so it is still there. So if you want to move the rig out, that is when we revoke. If you want to keep it permanently in Nigeria, you inform customs. However, there is a limit. You don't just keep it there permanently, but that applies mainly for vessels. Sometimes you are giving renewal period of 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 3 times, 4 times. So you have 2 years, 3 times. That's 6 years, for instance. After which it is assumed that you are supposed to renew. But let me tell you something. There are many people that take advantage of this law. All you need to do is move the vessel out of the country, do some other business, and bring it back and still renew your contract again. Once you leave Nigerian shores, even to as close as Ghana, and come back, you can start that contract all over again. So again, before we end this particular discussion, it will be very important too that issues like this are also established and a webinar proposed and discussed, we can devote time for issues of temporary importation discussion in customs. Because as simple as it may seem, there are many international businessmen who will not understand, and Nigeria is denied the opportunity of having them come and invest here. I will stop here for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I said it would be a very controversial question because I know, and why it is relevant to this discussion is that you cannot find these issues in the current SOPs. So for me, it was just by way of illustrating that you have these thorny issues, and these thorny issues also go to paint customs in not as good a light as customs could have been, because number one, people don't understand how to operate it, and number two, those who understand it have this asymmetry of information, and therefore they are able to exploit those who don't understand it. So this, we have found, has been a source of a lot of corruption in the oil and gas industry, simply because not everybody understands the issues, not everybody knows how to navigate those laws. And it's bringing me to the issue, which I will now throw to my colleagues from the MACN. If people do not know standard operating procedures and don't understand what they're meant to be, and then they meet people who fully understand it and recognize that the other party is ignorant, have they not set themselves up to be a sitting duck, really, for them to start paying for things they should not be paying for? Have we not created that opportunity? I don't know who wants to respond to that. Vivek, would that be you or Martin?
If I may take that, Martin. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think it goes back. You're very. The tone is set out very correctly. It goes back to the initial statement that was made about the language. If I come into a country, I don't understand the language, then we already have, a two set of operating procedures here, in a way of speaking. So you're absolutely right. If I bring my vessel in, and if I'm not, one, aware of the SOPs, two, if I don't make use of it correctly when I arrive, but also even before, if I'm not prepared, then I'm already creating some grounds for questioning or further inspection. But the question also comes around the fact that, as it was rightly mentioned, these details, this heavy details of something like moving a rig or how a rig can be used in Nigeria. A vessel has so many rules and regulations that has to be passed, for example, by Port Health, Nigerian Immigration, Customs Service. So even though there may be the list of details that you have to follow, the full extent of what the law requires is not something that we will have knowledge of. And this is where we would like the helping hand of the person boarding from the government agencies to let us know what is the requirement around this, and instead of using that as a leverage on board vessels. So we can at least understand what we are required to comply with. And maybe at that time we may not be able to comply, but at least for, like we call the sister ships that call in, or the future vessel call that we can come in, we can rectify those errors if they are errors. But I think this is where we encourage, agencies to be a partner in helping us do the right thing, and not necessarily use that as a leverage, is what I would like to comment on.
Okay. Martin, do you want to comment?
Yeah, well, just to echo here that if you have regulation that hasn't been properly translated into operational procedures, it's nearly impossible to actually follow that regulation. And that's what we see lacking in many countries, that there's a legal framework in place, but the actual operationalization is lacking. And there comes the SOPs, and there comes also the checklists and how the business and the maritime industry is actually preparing the vessels for the port call. And that's where we also try to support them. When SOPs are lacking, we need to find other ways to prepare. And then we can only look at international best practices and what is standard procedures in other ports. And also look at what does international anti-bribery legislation say and follow those guidelines on how you basically resist and so forth. So yeah, let me stop here, allow others to comment.
Okay, before we go further, let me just underscore this because I know that MACN conducted a survey like 2 years ago, and there's a fresh one that has just come out that I've had a sneak preview of. I know that 2 years ago, only like 58% of vessel captains were aware of standard operating.
I'm not sure if we lost Soji there for a moment. Ms. Cynthia, if you can confirm on that, please.
It seems like the screen has frozen.
Yeah.
And Cynthia, you're on mute.
You're on mute, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think his screen is frozen. Oh, he's gone off. I think he has internet issues.
Okay. Yeah, we can give him a couple of minutes to rejoin, I think, if that's okay.
Okay. Let me just check with him.
Thank you.
Apologies, I ran out of data on my data source. I had to recredit it. Apologies. So we have now 58% of the respondents now saying that they have used the standard operating procedures, which is also a major improvement over the position 2 years ago. Okay, when Mr. Fadikpe is ready, if he can just give us the thumbs up so we know that he's back with us, because I have a question for him. So we can see that things have improved, awareness has improved, but in 2 years, we've moved up only 2%. We really need to get like 90%, 99% of people knowing that there are these standard operating procedures, and even more of them using it. But I'm also happy to find out from your survey that now of all those 58% who say that they're aware and they've used the operating procedures, 83% of them are now aligning their company processes internally with Nigeria's standard operating procedures. I don't know, what do we expect to come out of this? Vivek, let me ask you that very quickly.
Yes, you're absolutely right. From what we have seen and the work we have done in 2019, together with your team, Soji, and all the stakeholders in Nigeria. If you recall the meeting in London, where we had the delegation from Nigeria present at the members' meeting. And I think all this work and the 3 roundtable events we have had in 2019, back to back in all 3 key areas, Lagos, Abuja, and in Port Harcourt. I think all this work has given traction to people starting to not just be aware and make some use of it, but actually implement that within their internal operating procedures that ship owners and shipping companies usually have. I wouldn't say that this is something new for them. They have always used operating procedures for various tasks and various port calls. Now, this is something they've got, I think, first-hand information from the work we have done. It is hosted at the Shippers Council website, where all the respective agencies have provided their own input for what is required from each agency. And taking that into a vessel or vessel operational point of view is very, very crucial. And that sign that 83% or more than 80% are implementing within their company procedures is a very positive sign. What it really means is we hope that we hope that in the future there will be less incidents. That is a big breakthrough to have. So any official from Nigerian government agencies are going on board, they can see that all the paperwork is ready, all the paperwork is in order, and there may not be any room for any misinterpretation or leverage, as I mentioned earlier, required in that context. So implementing standard operating procedures within the companies, respective companies, is a very good way to show that we are complying with what's required. We have read it, we have used it, and now we are ready for any kind of inspection the vessels can have. And this is where we believe that the partner is the authorities who are coming on board to see that this is what they have done and how they can be supportive of the whole process. So a lot of traction, I would say, in a fairly short period of time, but definitely this has come from the work that was started in 2012. So this is not something that happened overnight. Change takes time, and this is a positive direction. We are seeing small steps, but in the right and positive direction is what I think I've seen from the survey that we have collected so far.
Okay. Deputy Comptroller, if I can come back to you now, because you've seen how the private sector is beginning to adjust and react to the standard operating procedures that have been put in place in the ports. Yes, customs is one, immigrations, NDLEA, port health. We know all of the agencies, that great work has already been done by the government agencies themselves. But let me just ask you, for the example of customs, Nigerian Customs Service, how do you make sure, if we did a poll now, how many customs officers will say that they are aware of the standard operating procedures, not based on their training in school or in customs training school, but that they are really aware of these standard operating procedures that are housed with Shippers Council? Can you hazard a guess as to how many of them would say that they are aware?
Okay, I cannot hazard a guess. However, there are basics in every SOP. I'm happy you said not from the perspective of not from academic point of view. There is something about Nigerian customs recruitment policy. Even if you have PhD, you have doctorate degree in maritime matters, you studied in the Maritime University or the Custom University, if you join Nigerian Customs Service, you'll still undergo the basic training, no matter your qualification. You must undergo the basic training. And we have 3 training academies. We have one in Kano for the junior cadets. We have one for the middle level cadets. And we have the regional academy that serves the entire West and Central African sub-region of WCO. It's at Abuja. Why did I mention this? Every custom officer is trained to understand basic standard operational procedures. However, there are day-to-day operations that are unique to particular work environment. I have served at the Coastal Headquarters for 8.5 years. There are basic procedures that are unique to headquarters. There are basic procedures that are unique to the port. Take Tinkan Island Port, for instance. It is a rural port. It is a general cargo port and it's a bulk cargo port combined. Whereas Apapa, for instance, is a bulk cargo port and general cargo port, no RoRo. So you can see that even though you have two ports in
Please, for the sake of the audience, can you break down RoRo, what RoRo is?
Okay, RoRo means roll-on, roll-off vessels that bring in loose vehicles, unpacked vehicles, vehicles that are not inside containers. That's the ones we call RoRo. When you bring in vehicles and are not inside container, we call them RoRo vehicles. When you bring in vehicles inside container, we call them containerized cargo. Now, bulk cargo are those cargo that come in big bulk cargo vessels that are not containerized. For instance, you may have petroleum products, you may have wheat, you may have flour, you may have sugar, you may have salt. These are the ones we call bulk cargo. Now, the SOP, like I said before, is universal for customs, but there are basics that are peculiar to a particular environment that are unique, and we try to accommodate ourselves to that. And how do we do that? There are various seminars and interagency relationships that are established in the port. For instance, Martin just spoke about Shippers Council having developed an SOP. At the height of one of the congestions in the port, and under the Vice President's PEBEC is Presidential Enabling Business Environment Committee, they established a standard operational procedure by asking every government agency to submit what they do, what is expected, what stakeholders expect of them. And it was harmonized into a form of book or pamphlet that is to be given around for everybody. Shippers Council is pioneering that. But beyond that, we have what we call stakeholders engagement. If there is any development in the maritime industry, for instance, or at the border stations, stakeholders that are involved meet regularly to discuss and chart way forward. It's a form of FOP. Every agreement reached at such meetings serves as an SOP to be implemented, and everybody must abide with. And bringing it closer, besides training officers at Custom Academy, I am very much aware that the two major ports in Lagos, Apapa and Tinkan Port, have training rooms that is not just restricted to custom personnel, but is thrown open for all stakeholders to come in. It's opportunity for them to say, okay, we need this to be added, to be an improvement into what we are doing already. And remember, we said it's dynamic. There's no basic SOP that we say it is one stop all. Something can come up. But don't forget that SOP is beyond just operations. It must also include funding. It must include basic infrastructure. It must include training, as we've said, and most importantly, continuous stakeholder engagement. So when we talk about SOP here, it's not just about what you and I will do. It's also about the infrastructure available for us to make sure that that thing that we're supposed to do is made possible. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. If I may mention, sir, another area, because if people are getting all of this training and they understand the standard operating procedures, why then would they board a vessel? And when they have boarded a vessel, contrary to standard operating procedure, now proceed to ask the captain for cash, for gifts, and other items from the galley, which we all know is corruption. And we know that there's no agency in Nigeria that will have corruption as part of their standard operating procedures. It was certainly not how they were trained. They were trained well. They were shown standard operating procedures. So why, what gives room? And here I'm not talking about customs alone. I'm talking about ports officials generally. So this is not about customs. So I'm just asking for your opinion. Why do you think that some officials, when they get on board, feel comfortable enough to then ask the captain for cash or create a trumped-up fine, so that, you know, as happens now, when you are called, please show me your particulars. And you say, okay, this tire, has it expired? You say, oh, God, this is not my particulars. You say, this tire has expired. You must pay a fine for this tire. That kind of behavior is actually being exhibited to the captains. But because the captains are not from here, they can't take it with humor. Instead, they're terrified. And they really feel threatened when this goes on. So what do we think is responsible for this gap between standard operating procedures, which they've been trained on, and the actual behavior in the field in the end?
Okay, I want to believe that we are just precipitating this, that it is not something that happens all the time, because we have international audience, we have other audience that are here. You specifically use the word cash.
From the survey, sir.
Yes, no. Hold on.
Yes.
I've listened to what you said. Yes, there is absolutely some sense in what you've said. However, I don't think it is a universal or national principle in the country. And I will tell you why. Soji, you cannot legislate character and conduct of people.
True.
You can establish an SOP that is supposed to be standardized and everybody's supposed to abide by it. But you cannot legislate how I will act as an individual. So I would rather say that it is not rampant in the ports, neither is it a universal standard. And that agrees with what you said, that there's no agency that has corruption as part of its SOP.
Yes.
But like I said, there is a very tiny gap between ensuring control and activities by all the stakeholders. And I will tell you why. Take a particular shipping line, for instance, Maersk Line.
Yes.
Maersk Line has zero tolerance for what you just said. Don't forget that it takes two.
Yes.
To tango. What we've tried to do severally is to discourage this attitude where they exist. And some companies have taken it so high that it is a known language, like I said before. So now everybody knows that this particular vessel, when you board it, this will not happen and this will not happen and nobody will tolerate it. That takes us to the real SOP. It is universal. That is the real SOP. When you say that it is a policy, no matter what it takes. And then what entrenches this corruption, in quote, as you said, is where you don't meet requirements. Rather than force you to meet those requirements, both parties try to circumvent what the law provides, and it becomes a major challenge. So much as Maritime Anti-Corruption Network frowns at it, we as regulatory agencies also frown at it, because once you sustain such habits, you erode the confidence the international community will have in our society, and definitely it is going to impact negatively on our negotiations and transactions whenever we go for international trade meetings. However, what I want, some of those things that make implementation of these SOPs difficult, some of them are so cumbersome, like I mentioned during the last webinar. Yes. You don't simplify them. You don't make them look so simple. You have issues of, say, sealing up a particular, take on the part of custom, for instance, I'm supposed to seal up your store. You come into the vessel, is the captain himself trading? Does he want to trade? Does the crew want to trade? Did they resist my sealing up their store, pending when they will go, after providing them what they will eat for the period they will be there? And for instance, if I provide them what they will eat for 5 days, believing they will stay in my port for 5 days, is there any other external influence that will extend their stay beyond 5 days to the extent that the 5 days provision I've made for them is no longer okay for them? That will not make them want to open up the shop more beyond my own control and their control. That's why I said that issues of infrastructure and other external agencies should also come to play. But be that as it may, there are standards that some companies have already gotten adopted to. There are standards that some agencies has gotten adapted to. But don't forget, like I said, you cannot legislate people's character. So there are individuals. There's no government agency in Nigeria that will tell you that this is what is expected of us. What the law, let me mention this, I've mentioned it before when we met at Providence Hotel. What the law actually provides for customs, for instance, that when you get on board, of course, if you are going to spend time on board, you can share tea with the captain and crew while discussing with them. It is a universal law. But you are not allowed to take those items out of the vessel.
Yes.
It is not allowed. In those days, some captains used to trade. It was also known that you can go on board and buy a few foreign items. But with the involvement, things have evolved so much that nobody does that anymore. That was the days that traveling was a big deal. You need to travel by sea for weeks. But these days, under e-commerce, you can sit down here and those things you need can be sent to you in a matter of hours, and you get them. So the idea of trading with ship captains when they arrive is no longer in vogue. So I will stop here and hope that both the captains, the ship crew, and the regulators themselves understand the need to respect some of these agreed SOPs, as some liners have already attained. I can bet you there are liners that even as people are going on board, they already know that you don't play games with this particular liner, and nothing has happened to those liners. I think we should encourage that.
Thank you very, very much, Deputy Controller General. I am so pleased with your candor. I deliberately asked the question the way I did because I wanted the audience to know that it's a different customs service that we're dealing with. I'm sure none of the participants expected the answer and the level of candor with which you answered it. Now let me underscore some good news for you, sir. The survey done in 2018, it was 87% of the officials who went on board who would ask for cash and cigarettes and things like that. But the one that was just done this year, it has dropped to 68%. That is a major, major improvement. So, you know, I'm saying it so that people will understand that it's one thing to say Nigeria is corrupt, but it's another thing to say with standard operating procedures, with the two sides working in a concerted manner to ensure that they do not engage in that exchange, because it takes two. Very often, as soon as a question is asked about a seaman's book to the captain, and the captain is on shore, he's already offering something. And we know that it happens on the roads too. Somebody gets stopped by the police. He's unsure whether his particulars have expired or not. He's already offering something. And yet it didn't even cross the officer's mind at all. So we know that many times people offer, even when it is not demanded. And when it is demanded, we're finding more and more in the maritime sector that when you say, I am not paying, yes, it causes some delay, but after that delay, nothing else. There's no other repercussion. The next time you come, there's no issue. That is the reality. And maybe Martin or Vivek can attest to this.
Yes, definitely. We've been working with the membership in the maritime industry for a number of years, and to really encourage them to say no and push back more frequently and be ambitious in their policies. And in the past year, we've seen some great news and developments, especially with the collaboration we have with the Moses Fadipe on actually resolving cases, where we have previously had challenges to actually resolve issues in the port during port calls, but now we see them being resolved in a very short time period. Things that used to take days now gets resolved in a few hours, and this is a dramatic development, and it also shows the good collaboration we've established here from both the industry side, willing to actually say no, but also the government side to actually listen and take this passionately. So I think it's very encouraging. Vivek, anything to add there on latest developments?
Yeah, thank you. I think it goes back to what we again started off in the discussion, that it takes two to tango, but also the whole thing around compliance. You know, we mentioned that in also the previous meeting. There are different levels of compliance carried out by individuals, companies, and all stakeholders in the ports and so on. So this is where MACN is trying to put a clear framework for anyone who is part of the membership will follow those guidelines. You know, there are clear compliance requirements, and one of the things that we're doing in Nigeria is to somehow incorporate the SOPs that are being built by the government agencies into their own existing operating procedures. So what that really means is not just captains can follow that blindly and they can go into port calls, but they now have a placeholder to say that this is something that you have created, we are complying with. That builds the whole language thing that we talked about. You know, we are at least coming with the same language when we come into port. And the second thing, what I think over time we are able to do together is, as Martin also mentioned, or also previously you mentioned, that masters today can say no. This change for everybody. The fact that a master says no to an authority was not common previously. An authority suddenly says, oh, somebody is saying no to me now when I demanded something. At the same time, masters couldn't say no earlier. Now they are able to say no. This is something we also saw in Egypt, and when they transit the ships through the Suez Canal, we see more and more masters simply saying, no, we will not entertain anything for a service that we already paid for. So the whole change is being understood, is being reflected on, but it's new for everybody. And that's why I think everyone is actually reacting in some way or the other. Oh, this is not something I'm used to. So a no from both sides is new to everyone. And that is very unique in the work that we have managed to achieve over the years. And the very fact that it's not just a no, I think this is where we want to also add to the Shippers Council's work together with all the other agencies, that when a no is clear, they are able to also report this. And they can get remedies or solutions to what they're saying no to. So just to add on to what Martin said last year, after the implementation of SOPs and the grievance process that we have together with Shippers Council and all the other agencies, we have, from zero, we had 8 successful cases resolved in 2019. Of course, that may not seem as a big number, but what I'm trying to encourage all listeners here is that there is a small incremental change happening in the right direction. 0 to 8 is a good number to start with. We want to lean on that. And this year we have seen few more companies making use of that system, which is in place from the Nigerian government. And I think this is the traction we want to see more and more. So it's not just about saying no. When they say no, they have a clear way to report this and get remedies to whatever they are reporting to. And this is where I think all agencies together with the Shippers Council have been very, very helpful and as you said, rightly so, Ji, it may take a little bit more time. There may be delays, but they are able to do the right thing always. And this is the change we want to continue going forward. So it does take time. It may be frustrating, but it is something that we have gained some traction on. I'll stop here with that.
Okay, if I may just quickly say, Deputy Controller, that the reason I brought it up is that a lot of the corruption was from the ship captains themselves. I want that to go on record, because in the old days, they used what they had on board to create friends in different ports. As they go from port to port, they would either through the trade, like you mentioned, or even gifts, use it to make friends, so that next time they come, ah, yes, my friend, oh, you have come again, what do you have for me? They will share it. It was a deliberate culture that had gone on for, I would say, almost hundreds of years in the industry. Sorry, Vivek, I'm not putting down your industry, but to say that these things had been going on. Now, where is the difference? What has changed? What has changed is because of things like the UK Bribery Act, where if your ship captain bribes a foreign public official, you sitting in Copenhagen, in Denmark, you are liable. Or you sitting in London, you are liable for what your ship captain is doing. So it's making companies get tighter on compliance, which is putting pressure on the shipmasters and which is making them very nervous when they come, because they know what they used to do with their partner before. So now somebody has said they can't do it anymore. And now they're scared that what will happen if I now tell my old friend I can't do it anymore. So it's not as though that the captains were better or the captains are cleaner. No, on the contrary, it was a game that was played throughout the industry across all ports across the world. It was not, and it's certainly not unique to Nigeria. So it's now, how do we, since compliance is moving at different speeds in different places, how do we increase the speed of compliance in Nigeria as well? So that has been the challenge for us. I don't know if you have any comments, sir. We can't hear you, sir. You're muted.
Sorry, I will say that I want to say that much as I will take the reduction from the last survey from 87% to 68% as an improvement and a compliment, I will still say that I'm not impressed. There's nothing that says we cannot reduce it further to 0. But there's something I know about survey. If there are 6 or 7 government agencies that board vessels and rummage vessels, if 6 of them are compliant and 1 is not compliant, it affects the entire survey.
Yes.
So I will state that we've made tremendous improvement. And I'm saying this because for the last 3 years, I've been the head of enforcement in Tinkan Port. And that means I am directly responsible for boarding of vessels in Tinkan Port. So I will say that the reduction that we've achieved is partly as a result of some of the effort and reform we've put in place with you people, with some of us being there. But I will also accept responsibility for the past activities that were negative too. But like I said, there should be concerted effort by everybody so that these statistics will further go down. And this is not just about regulatory agencies or ship captains alone. Ship agents themselves should also be held accountable. We've not mentioned them.
Yes.
Because if I'm a regulator and you are a ship agent interfacing between me and the crew and the ship captain, you also have a role to play. Have you put your documentation right? Have you carried out all requirements expected of you by the regulators before your vessel will arrive? Have you put in place the necessary stevedoring procedures that will require all these delays that eventually will translate into the captains being in a panic mood, that we want him to do certain things in order to meet his obligation at the next port of call. So these are some of the things that we are going to discuss holistically by bringing everybody to be accountable for some of these behaviors, so that this same statistics that is 68% now, by next survey, we will be able to say it is no longer 2-digit, but at best 1-digit. That's what I can contribute for now.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Fadipe, are you with us? Mr. Fadipe, we would really like to hear from you, because you know, we've talked about vessels now improving their compliance with standard operating procedures, but we have had issues from time to time where they have had to report that the standard operating procedures are not being followed. So the question is, when that report is made and it is sent to Nigeria Shippers Council, what do you do with it? What do you do with those reports when they are made? We'll give you a few seconds to reach your destination. You're still muted, sir.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, am I loud and clear?
Yes.
Okay. When there are infractions on board of vessels that are caused at territorial waters, whether at the berth or on the high sea, we have developed and put in place a mechanism through which we can be reached real time. And that is the grievance reporting mechanism you mentioned, which goes by acronym Port Service Support Portal. Apart from that, as a backup, we have a webmail to back it up, which is complaints@shipperscouncil.gov.ng. So immediately we get such report of any infraction on board a vessel, whether on the high sea or at the berths. We look at which agency is responsible. When we get the agency responsible, we equally look at what the master of the vessel complaint is all about. And we quickly get across to that agency. Because remember, each agency has a representative on the project steering committee, who is an higher officer, not a lower officer, to quickly deal with the matter. And because there's a timeline for these vessels at that facility, if it's not quickly resolved, we quickly tell the master to tell that agency of government train up that infraction to issue what we call remitter. It's like an invoice for payment. And we advise that money should be paid by the agency of that, by the husband of that vessel. There's an agency husbanding that vessel who will now bring such cases for post-audit. And we equally ask master in his remark while living at territorial waters to give us a document we called load port time log. This
unable to hear you, Mr. Fadipe.
Every activity on that vessel while it stay away. We could be able to know. Hello, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now.
Hello, sir.
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Now, where I stopped is, I hope you heard me when I said the load port time log. You heard me to that point.
Yes, we had that.
Now, that document will enable us to know the timeline of each agencies on board of that vessel. And we equally ask the master to furnish us with the vessel register before embarkation or disembarkation of that vessel. But the good news so far is each time those things were sent, those complaints were sent to the grievance reporting mechanism or the webmail, in less than 30 minutes to 1 hour, such infractions are dropped naturally. Such infractions are dropped by whatever agency that put it up naturally. So the question is, are those infractions genuine or not? So if you ask me, they are not genuine. They are just infractions to push pressure on the captain of the vessel to say, oh, guys, this is coffee tea. I mean, this is coffee money. But we've told them that there must be an SOP on board of vessel equally, apart from the SOP developed by Nigerian government. And that SOP on board of vessels must include zero tolerance for corruption. No giving of inducement, no giving of bribe, no giving of souvenir, no giving of drinks. So MACN,
tea
you say?
that they can drink on board, not even the customary cup of tea.
Well, what we are saying is, when you go on board, at the master's conference table, yes, you could be offered water or tea, but you take it there, not to take it away. That's what we are saying.
Okay, okay.
And whenever any agency accosts with any infraction, like let me give an example, like the customs. If it's a bulk cargo, when they go on board, having you spend their 45 minutes timeline, at the dot of 1 hour, they allow for operations to commence. If they won't have cause to still commence, continue their activity there. They will allow them to break bulk. But not a situation whereby a port head who is to declare free pratique will be on board for 1.5 hours. What is he doing there? What is he doing there? Because without the free pratique, customs or immigration cannot go on board. So there are delays. So what are we saying is to eliminate these delays. But by and large, the grievance mechanical software, which is PSSP, the webmail has tremendously helped us in this our assignment. And I'm happy. I'm looking at Vivek Menon there. Vivek, we have been working together with Mr. Soji Akwampa on all these infractions. Each time we communicate ourselves, in less than 1 hour, the vessel is left off the hook. And the joy in the whole thing is that there has never been any backlash. Because in the past, there are backlash in the past. But when we now started this joint collaborative effort, there has not been any issue of backlash. And once in a while, there are sting operations once in a while. And that sting operation is still ongoing once in a while. This is to keep our agencies in check. to let them know the government is watching. We are not sleeping. I think that answers your question for now, sir. Mr. Abamba.
Thank you very much. Martin, do you have any comments to make to all of this before I return to the Deputy Comptroller?
No, I mean, just an encouragement to all businesses on the call that work with us and reach out. We are a network in the maritime industry, and we've been working in Nigeria since 2012, and we've seen a lot of wins by working collaboratively with the government. This year we are expanding our efforts to also focus on cargo clearance. So if you're an importer or exporter of goods, take the chance to connect with us. Because what we would like to do is also to expand our efforts to that side of the supply chain and see if we can also improve adherence of SOPs and transparency on the land side of things, and how goods are moved on the land side before reaching the seaports and so forth. So we need your support, and we have the methodology in place to collaborate with governments and actually improve how business is done, both from a compliance and integrity standpoint, but also from an efficiency standpoint. Yeah, let me stop there. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Controller, you can make your comment, but I want to ask just one person from the audience to make a comment as well. Mrs. Okodua, I wonder if you can make a brief intervention.
Thank you very much, Soji, and hello to everyone on the panel and whoever else is in the audience listening to me. My comment would be brief as follows: that it is very, very, very heartwarming to see the work that we started with MACN in 2012, that is ICPC and MACN and the other agencies like TUGAR, the Technical Unit on Governance and Anti-Corruption Reforms, BPP, and all the other ports agencies, the work we started together in 2012, that we are now receiving traction from all that effort. It was very good to learn of the statistics, the downward trend. Also very good to hear Mr. Nadi, speak with such candor about the issues. It is so heartwarming, and I agree totally with Vivek that this is change in the right direction, where we just have to keep driving the change. Thank you so much, everybody that has been involved in this, and we can only continue to work together for the betterment of this country, and all stakeholders in the maritime sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma. Over to you, sir, Deputy Comptroller. We can't hear you, sir.
I said first, I must thank Moses for some of the insights that he has given, and also thank Sokodua for appraising what we've done and appreciating it. But let me say that when Moses was speaking, he mentioned the issues of bulk cargo vessels, for instance. Let me state that much as we appreciate timing for boarding activity, our efforts should be geared towards control and national security. If you have the size of a vessel with the timing, how long you're supposed to be in that vessel. We just received a vessel that is 300 meters long. So we cannot say that it is compulsory that you must spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour in such vessel. It depends on the number of cabins. It depends on the number of stores that you are going to see. It depends on the number of crew. So if Port Health, for instance, has to enter that vessel before they issue pratique, and you have, let's say, crew members that are up to between 50 and 100 or 150 crew, or maybe 30, 40 crew, particularly under this COVID-19, and you have to test all of them, you have to get through their certificates to find out their health status. Of course, the timing will be different. there are certain indices that we should not use to judge performance in the system, just like breaking bulk. When I mentioned activities of ship agents, if you have a vessel that is coming in and you need to break bulk, but you've not paid your custom duty, you've not got the right survey for your cargo, you've not got the documents right, of course, that's going to be delayed. That is why I said that it's going to be all-encompassing. Everybody's supposed to play a particular role. But there is also something I've noticed. In trying to ensure compliance, sometimes we create some territorial activities. So you patch one side of your cloth and use it to also, you tear from one side of your cloth, use it to patch the other side. There's still a hole. I will give you an instance. In implementing what Moses just said, part of the recommendation is that a particular government agency should bus in everybody that's coming for boarding in order to achieve a one-stop boarding. That was practically impossible. That you bring in a bus and you get all agencies to stay inside that bus and you move them to ship side. Then port health will go in, come out, then wait, others come out, go in, wait. Yes, that was suggested. But I remember I said then that it's not going to work, it's not going to be practical. But then, because of the desperation to achieve compliance and get a better image in the international community, some of us suggested that we should adopt that. Remember, at the inception of this discussion, we said that SOPs should be dynamic. When you apply certain standards and you find out that it is not working, particularly when you consider the uniqueness of your environment, we should be bold enough to change those and accommodate new ones. Another one is this idea of struggle, for instance, on who boards a vessel first. I'm surprised that Moses didn't mention that. Sometimes something as simple as that becomes an obstacle to the system. And why is it so? It's because people are not accepting the universal standard. For that one, there is a universal standard of who boards a vessel first. Port health. I don't want to mention who we follow after port health so that I don't start another controversy here. These particular other agencies are not here. But I think minor things like this, I think that we should also consider. But we should also give credit to the agencies that are coming on board. At the same time, we should also mention that as much as possible, Nigeria should abide by international standards for boarding vessels. We cannot say, because we want to ensure compliance, we create more agencies to be part of ship boarding as it is right now. Because as it is now, you heard what Moses said, there is a sting operation going on. That sting operation means another body coming on board too, to be part of boarding operation. The busing of people inside is part of operation. Before we started this thing, I went through the SOP of some of the other sister agencies. And I even saw where somebody mentioned that part of their work is to be part of boarding. But internationally, it shouldn't be so. It shouldn't. And that's why I said that in developing an SOP, I said it from inception, agencies should give the regulatory requirements and legal requirements, mandating them to do some of the things they want to do. Let me stop here, moderator, and hear from others too. Thank you.
Okay, we've now come to the end, really, of this webinar, but there's one question I would like us to part with. And that question is, how do we integrate SOPs into the daily operations at the ports? How do we do that? So the poll results, we launched the poll as well, asking how adequate are the standard operating procedures. I think the audience agrees that it is somewhat adequate. We recognize from the beginning that it's not perfect, but at least for what we need to do, it is somewhat adequate. Then which agency drives compliance at the port? Which agency drives compliance at the port with SOPs? they have said Shippers Council, Maritime Anti-Corruption. Actually, we put Maritime Anti-Corruption as a red herring. We are not part of the agencies at the ports. But, you know, so we were hoping to see people of the agencies themselves. So we can see the level of work that still needs to be done in raising awareness of people so that they understand, number one, MACN is not even part of government and should not be part of those who are listed to be involved with driving compliance. However, yes, driving compliance with its members and with the private sector, yes, Maritime Anti-Corruption Network can assist. But I think the question number 2 is an issue which needs to be resolved by the government, because there's no particular agency at the moment that is responsible for ensuring compliance across. Each agency is responsible for its own compliance at the moment, but nobody across the sector. So very quickly, 1 minute each, maybe starting with Martin, then Vivek, if you can just tell us what you think we should do to integrate standard operating procedures into our daily operations.
Yes, I think it's key Martin. To consider. Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
When we start looking at our SOPs and reviewing and potentially also updating and revising them, I think we should keep in mind that they need to make business sense. If we want to incentivize adoption of SOPs, it should be SOPs that are obviously detailed and rigorous and capture all the technicalities required, but they also have to be easy to implement in the sense that they should make business sense. We should rely on the digital solutions available and avoid paper-based process when possible, really. So let's keep the business, ease of doing business focus and the compliance in our head at the same time. So 2 thoughts in our head at the same time. Thank you for that.
Vivek?
Yeah, I think I would probably lean on to a less technical aspect of this, from how do you implement SOPs. From what I mentioned earlier, that we have been trying to work with our members, work with the captains to actually practice the use of SOPs, make use of it and then see how they can benefit from it. From the other side, when I look at agencies and authorities coming on board, I think what I would really encourage is that partnership, the whole partnership in implementing the SOPs, as rightly said by Mr. Nandi, that is not just something that's written on a piece of paper. It's the whole, all the other elements, the infrastructure and the training that's in part of it. Because there is training provided to both entities here. We are also providing skills and education and training to our members, the seafarers and the captains are being provided some input in how they can behave and what they should look out for. At the same time, you see that's happening even in the public sector side. So what I'm trying to say here is, from a behavior perspective, shipmasters should feel that public personnel coming on board is there to help them and not otherwise. This is the natural fear that I myself have had. When I see people with uniform, they come here to find something. They come here to find fault. Though I've done everything right, they have come here to find something fault on my ship. Now that trust deficit we need to build on. We need to show that they're coming here to help you, not to find something wrong on board the ship, which is how it's perceived today. So I would lean on to more on the soft side of how we can implement SOPs from a, of course we need the technical side, but also how we approach people and how we use that behaviors to our advantage, which will definitely encourage people to say no, but also to report. But at the same time, agencies become part of this whole journey, that they can say, look, if my service is unsatisfactory, you can report this. It's like going to a restaurant again. I will refer to the restaurant again, that you have the smileys that you have. How did you find this experience here? So if we are able to come to that level, I think the whole behavior and the interaction of behaviors will definitely improve, let alone in Nigeria, which as we spoke earlier, that other countries are looking into seeing how they're able to standardize the operating procedures, but also how are they able to address the behaviors around this. So I would stop there and say that encouragement would be useful for both public and private sector here. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fadipe.
Yes, thank you. So before I comment on the SOP, let me quickly put a quick one across. Based on Mr. Anandi, international best practice, ported bought the vessel first. After the pre-fatigue, followed by the customs and immigration. So that one is clear. It's very clear. Now, the project steering committee, which is a committee of all maritime agencies, to look at the seamless trade facilitation at the ports, have all members of agencies on board of that project steering committee. And to make it work, to make the SOP work as asked by Mr. Akampa, I would suggest that there should be a compliance officers from each agency who is at the management level, not just an agency sending an officer, so that if there's any infraction against any agency, let that compliance officer be easily reached so that it could be able to remedy that infraction on behalf of his agency. Wherein it goes beyond him, then it could be escalated to the project steering committee or any other committee put in place to address such issues. We are a good nation. Nigeria is a great nation. We have a lot of people who are very honest, even though there are bad eggs. But I want to believe with cooperation, collaboration, partnership between all agencies of government to see the business of government as one, to see that business, to say, yes, it is a business for our nation, that we must help our nation to get out of this doldrum. I want to believe that at the end of the day, it's going to be a success story. Thank you very much.
Deputy Controller, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator. Let me state that you asked two questions. One is issue of somebody that will be delayed to ensure compliance.
Okay, we're struggling to hear you, sir.
Sorry, I said you raised two issues. One is the issue of who is supposed to be the head of compliance for some of these things we are discussing. And the second one is how do we incorporate some of these SOPs in our daily operations. Let me state that most of the time, from my interaction with some other custom administrations in the sub-region, I found out that everything is relied upon in terms of legal procedures. What does the law say? Not what your emotions or sentiments say. And even when there is need for your emotions and sentiments to set in, they quickly legislate such emotions and sentiments, make it law, and remove it as emotions. It becomes law. So I must say that in the port, Custom and Desire Management Act, which is law of the Federation of Nigeria, says that Section 12, all the ports are custom ports. And from what I said initially, I said that trade is synonymous with customs. So whether we like it or not, customs is naturally positioned to manage activities in the port. Not managing of infrastructure, but managing of port operations. It is important that we define it, and it is backed by law. The law of the Federation of Nigeria, Section C45 of SEMA. Let me also state that we have import and export guidelines issued by Federal Ministry of Finance. Remember, in our last webinar, I mentioned issues of policies, that people should take advantage of policies. These are policies issued. The import guidelines are policies issued by government, most of the time backed by presidential directives. So people should also learn to abide by them. In Nigeria, for instance, import guidelines provide that you must provide processed from M through a commercial bank before you can be issued a pre-arrival assessment document by customs for your cargo. These are documents that give you opportunity to check every other area you think you are going to have hindrance in the course of trading, for you to be able to address them before you even approach any of the regulators in the system. But is it so? Do people do the right thing there? I will come to that. Actual cargo clearance in the port has largely gone E. So we have e-declaration, we have e-payment, we have e-manifest, we even have e-release. So the question is, at what point do we still have conflict? As a matter of fact, the only custom procedure, the only procedure in the port that is still directly with customs is cargo examination. E-manifest is handled by shipping companies. E-release is handled by terminal operators. E-declaration is handled by clearing agents themselves. E-payment is handled by the agents and their bank. The only thing that we participate directly in right now in the port is cargo examination. So the question is, why do we still have issues? Those issues come up because some of the mandate we have as customs is actually made for compliant traders. It is when you are not compliant that issues of further intervention beyond this immediate mandate we have comes up. And I think if you are asking for who is going to be the lead agency, I've defined that. But if you're also going to ask for the most important thing that we are going to do to ensure compliance, it is integrity. The integrity of the entire supply chain needs to be improved in all ramifications. And I will stop there, sir.
Thank you very much. Before we close, we have a comment from a Babalola James to all panelists that SOPs is a good start by government, that the Deputy Comptroller has said it requires infrastructure and funding. He wants to add that port users' cooperation is also necessary for the attainment of corruption-free ports. Some agents are freelance or casual workers. Government must come in to adjust these irregularities of casualization. If port agencies are handled, what about the side of shipping agents, the husband of vessels, both cargo and protective agents? Lastly, the panel should be expanded to accommodate shipping agents and other allied ports users whom the bulk of the corruption landed in their doorsteps. We take the points that you have made. We will ensure that it's against the next time to air their views for the sake of fairness and equity. As it was said earlier, that you cannot legislate character. Then he also says that we should note that Ship's Port Entry Guide prescribes what to offer or give as presents to port authorities coming to board vessels in the ports. The book goes further to state what agencies in various countries of the world prefer, to ensure that inappropriate gifts remain inappropriate gifts. Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is probably a good place to end the webinar. We want to thank most especially the Deputy Comptroller of Customs, Mr. Nadi, for the time that he has given, for the effort he has put in, and also for the candor with which he explained the things that were unclear to us, the things that people have been misconstruing and misunderstanding. We thank you very much indeed for that. We want to thank also Mr. Moses Fadikbe of the Nigeria Shippers Council for his cameo appearance. We hope we can have more of your time another time. We thank you very much for the great contribution that you have made, and we look forward to continuing the collaboration. We want to thank Mr. Vivek Menon of the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network, and also Mr. Martin Benderson of the Maritime Anti-Corruption Network. You see the backgrounds look the same, but they're not even in the same country at this moment. So thank you for visiting us from Finland, and thank you for visiting us from Denmark as well. I want to also thank Mrs. Rashidat Okodua for accepting my impromptu promotion from being an attendee to a panelist. I'm glad that she didn't turn us down. And I'm happy that you're seeing the fruit of the hard work that you and other colleagues have been doing since 2012. We're very grateful for that great start, and we intend to continue to build on that momentum. On that note, thank you very much to all participants for staying with us right the way through till now. And until the next time, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.